Have you ever felt that someone is thinking about you, even when absolute silence exists between you, as if that person's energy still touches you in an inexplicable way, even from afar? Carl Jung believed that human connections transcend the boundaries of time and space. In his view, we are not only connected through memories and words, but through something much deeper, a psychic connection that vibrates within the collective unconscious. When someone truly feels your absence, it doesn't just show up in their thoughts. It pulses through the body, through the soul, through signs that escape any logical explanation. In this video, you will discover 5 of the most subtle yet powerful signs that someone is yearning to see you. But be mindful, this is not about superficial longing or forced messages. This is about genuine yearning, which Jung would describe as something that rises from the deepest core of the psyche, where repressed emotions turn into symbolic energy, trying to find their way back to you. Because when a soul calls out for someone, it sends signals, and when you learn to recognize them, you'll understand that silence can speak louder than any word. Perhaps while watching this video, you'll realize that the emptiness that hurts you is also hurting on the other side. That the person you thought had forgotten you relives your shared memories every day. Rumi teaches us that every true encounter leaves a mark on the soul. And these marks are not erased by distance. They simply rest, waiting to be reawakened. That's why you shouldn't skip this video. What you're about to hear may forever change how you perceive unspoken emotions, broken glances, and the coldest silences. Maybe, right at this moment, someone is longing for you deeply, and you don't even know it. But by the end of this video, you will. Prepare yourself. What we are sharing here goes far beyond any advice. It is a journey into the unconscious, guided by the profound ideas of Carl Jung. And perhaps, as you allow yourself to be drawn into it, you'll realize that you too are yearning for someone. First sign: dreams and archetypal images. When someone feels a deep longing, it often manifests in the world of dreams, a realm Jung regarded as a gateway to the unconscious. He taught that dreams are not mere fantasies, but symbolic messages full of meaning, originating from the deepest layers of the psyche. If a particular person keeps appearing in your dreams, it can be a strong sign that they are yearning for you, even without saying a single word. This phenomenon arises because, within the collective unconscious, archetypes, universal images, and symbols act as messengers of unspoken emotions. Longing, though often quiet, seeks expression through symbols and recurring figures that urge you to look, to recognize the presence of the other within yourself. Jung said that such dreams are a call to acknowledge the psychic energy that still flows between you. These dreams are not merely dreams. They are emotionally charged images that echo in your soul and can leave you restless even during the day. This restlessness is a subtle form of communication that escapes rational control, a constant reminder that this person still holds a meaningful place in your inner world and in their own. Saudade, this deep longing, transcends the physical and anchors itself in the invisible field of the unconscious. Recognizing the signs that appear in dreams is a way to reconnect with what Jung called the shadow, the repressed or forgotten aspects of the self that must be integrated to achieve wholeness. When someone misses you, a part of their own shadow may be tied to your absence. And this shadow reveals itself in your unconscious in the form of dreams, symbols, and deep emotions. So do not ignore the face or memory that appears in your dreams with intensity and emotion. It could be your unconscious speaking, revealing that an invisible bond still exists between you. A saudade that transcends time and space, that lives in the realm of archetypes and pulses within the soul. Part 2, the second sign: silence that speaks more than words. For Jung, the silence between two people can be just as meaningful as a long conversation. Silence can be a powerful means of conveying saudade, especially when words are absent or suppressed. The lack of contact can paradoxically be the clearest expression of an unspoken feeling, an emptiness that screams for presence. When someone longs for you, silence can turn into its own language, an expression of the inner conflict between the desire for closeness and the fear of vulnerability. Jung would explain that this tension lies at the core of the human psyche, the yearning for the other and, at the same time, the fear of revealing oneself. That is why silence is never empty. It is full of emotion, hope, and pain. Have you ever noticed that some people never truly disappear from your life? Even in silence, they appear in your thoughts, memories, and above all, in what Jung called emotional complexes, psychic centers full of emotional energy that surface in unexpected ways, in a glance, a gesture, or almost mystical coincidences. This loud silence is a clear sign of the saudade that still exists, even when words are missing. Jung taught that true communication is not only what is spoken, but what is deeply felt. What was not said, what remained unspoken between you, still holds power. And silence is the channel through which this saudade expresses itself. Do you sense a strange silence between you and someone? Then listen closely. Perhaps it speaks louder than you think, and reveals that someone is yearning for you, but is afraid to open up emotionally again. Part 3. The third sign, small gestures and synchronicities. Jung introduced a revolutionary concept that explains many emotional phenomena, synchronicity. He described it as a meaningful coincidence between the inner and outer world, not explainable by causality, yet carrying deep symbolic significance. When someone longs for you, small gestures, events, or seemingly random encounters can be signs that this person is still thinking about you. Have you ever felt chills when hearing a song that reminded you of someone, or noticed that places or objects suddenly take on special meaning, like invisible bridges between two separated souls? Jung would have said that such moments are manifestations of synchronicity, messages from the unconscious that connect two people across different layers of reality. These small coincidences are not mere chance. They carry the psychic energy of nostalgia, trying to express itself through everyday symbols to show that, despite the distance, an emotional connection still exists. For Jung, these are forms of nonverbal communication through which the universe reminds us that a true connection continues to exist. These signs can also appear in small, spontaneous gestures, an impulsively sent message, a shared memento, or an unexpected gift. They are expressions of the collective unconscious trying to restore emotional balance, an attempt to bridge the physical distance. That's why you shouldn't underestimate these little everyday details. They may be the path the other soul has chosen to let you know that saudade is alive, pulsing, and waiting to be recognized. Part 4. The fourth sign, the energy that still vibrates between you. For Jung, the psyche is not an isolated space, but constantly interacts with others, forming an invisible web of emotional energies. When someone feels genuine longing, it creates a psychic vibration that, even if subtle, can be felt on the other side. Have you ever felt, in a moment of deep connection, as if the air around you was filled with inexplicable emotional tension? Jung called this the psychic field, an invisible dynamic energy that exists between people with deep bonds. This energy persists even across physical distance, as if there were a guiding thread between two souls. This energetic field reveals itself in physical sensations, unexplainable heaviness, sudden restlessness, or a longing that weighs on the heart. These are signs that the other's presence still echoes within you, and that he or she in some way is still there, despite being physically far away. So, if you feel this kind of energy, this inexplicable sadness or saudade without logical reason, know that it might be the reflex of a bond that still exists, a sign that someone is yearning for you, and that this nostalgia is generating a vibration that transcends time, space, and consciousness. Part 5. The fifth sign, intuition as the messenger of saudade. Carl Jung valued intuition as one of the deepest functions of the psyche. a form of knowledge that goes beyond logical thinking and reaches into the unconscious. When someone sincerely longs for you, your intuition can pick up on this emotional presence in subtle ways, like an inner whisper or a sudden insight. How often have you had the impulse to call someone for no apparent reason, or a strong feeling that someone is thinking about you at that very moment? For Jung, such experiences are not coincidences but expressions of the unconscious, bridges of nostalgia that are invisibly built and perceived through intuition. Intuition is the voice of the self, that inner center of the psyche that strives for wholeness and connection. Through it, you can perceive not only the visible, but also the hidden, what is felt but not spoken. So trust these inner signals. They are signs that longing exists, and that this saudade may even be mutual. If you allow this energy to flow, the invisible bond between you might manifest, perhaps even in a reunion. Have you ever felt something stir within you without being able to explain it? Like an invisible breath brushing your soul, carrying the echo of an unspoken thought, or the nostalgic scent of a presence that is no longer there? There are moments when a person's absence is not just a circumstance but an atmosphere. It doesn't only live in memory, it dwells in your body, in your gestures, in your gaze that suddenly falls into emptiness, that unexplainable tightness in your chest, the subtle sting at nightfall, or when a song blends into the noise of the world. That is not just sadness, it is something more primal, deeper, something Jung would have called the whisper of the shadow, that unconscious part that carries our most secret desires and repressed emotions. What we don't want to admit to ourselves, yet still lives within us. Some people do not need to be physically present for their energy to continue shaping our lives, because not every bond requires words or logic to remain alive. Sometimes it is an energetic connection that defies all explanation. You think of this person at the most unexpected moments, not because you want to, but because something beyond your will is calling them. And even though you try to distract yourself, to rationalize it or create distance, there are forces that cannot be controlled, memories that can't be filed away, emotions that have no deadline. You know it when you unconsciously draw their face in your thoughts. You know it when you say their name in a dream and wake up with a feeling for which you have no words. It's not just love, not just nostalgia. It is a kind of presence that refuses to disappear, as if this soul refuses to leave yours. And then you ask yourself whether you also appear in their silence, whether you might be the unspoken thought when they stare off into the void. There are people who say nothing but feel with overwhelming intensity, and there are people who walk away out of pride, fear, or unresolved wounds, even though a part of them still secretly calls out to you. The difficult part is, this call doesn't sound like words, but like vibrations. It shows up in synchronicities, in little signs from the universe, in coincidences that are too precise to be mere chance. What if that song playing right at the moment you thought of them wasn't a coincidence? What if that recurring dream, that flutter in your stomach, or that breeze at a specific place weren't just random phenomena but encrypted messages? The soul has its own language, and it rarely speaks directly. Intuition is the oldest voice within us. It does not shout. It reveals itself to those who have learned to listen. That unexplainable feeling, that sudden premonition, is often the expression of something unresolved. Sometimes it's a sign that someone on the other side is feeling the same, quietly remembering you, caught in an inner conflict between wanting to return and not knowing how. Pride, fear, the belief that it's over. These can be high walls, but even behind those walls, the soul continues to speak. And often it speaks through the body, a restlessness without cause, a heavy fatigue, a vague sense of unease. All of these are ways in which the unconscious tells us something wants to be seen, acknowledged, maybe even healed. If a connection was real and left a mark deep within you, it doesn't just disappear. It can hide, it can sleep for years, but it does not fade. Because what was deeply felt remains etched forever in the skin of your soul. Jung spoke of archetypal imprints, of symbols that embed themselves in our psyche and resonate every time something in our environment triggers them. And often those imprints are shared. What you feel isn't always just yours. Sometimes you also feel the vibration of the other, the emotional movement of someone connected to you on that subtle level where words are no longer enough. And perhaps you ask yourself, why does it still hurt, even after so much time has passed? Why is it returning now, just when I thought I had let go? Maybe because saudade, that Portuguese word that can hardly be translated, doesn't follow the chronological sense of time, but the rhythm of the soul. And the soul doesn't forget by the calendar, but through transformation. The only way for something to stop hurting is not to ignore it, but to integrate it, to stop fighting the feeling and instead ask, what is it trying to tell me? Sometimes the pain of absence isn't just because the other person left, but because a part of you stayed behind and hasn't fully returned yet. And in this quiet waiting, in this in-between space between who you were and who you are becoming, their presence still echoes. And if the echo is still audible, then something is still vibrating within you. Maybe it's not even about their physical return. Maybe it's not about them becoming part of your life again, but about acknowledging the place they've occupied, the lesson they left behind, the internal shift they caused, because even nostalgia has its purpose, to remind us of what was real, what touched our hearts, what resonated with us on the deepest level. Not everything that ends disappears. There are connections that don't break, they just transform. And there are emotions that don't fall silent, they simply seek another form of expression. If you feel that someone still lives within your soul, then listen honestly to yourself. Not to hold on, but to understand, not to repeat the past, but to honor it and give it its rightful place within you. You may never receive external confirmation. No words that say, yes, I feel the same. But the soul doesn't need confirmation, it needs truth. And if something in you still beats with this person's name, if you feel something stir when you close your eyes, then accept that beating. Because there is nothing more human than longing, and nothing deeper than love, even from a distance, even in silence. And in that honest acknowledgement, in that non-judgmental acceptance, healing begins, not to forget, but to become free. Because true closure isn't forgetting, it's peace. And that peace comes when we stop denying what we feel and begin to see what the soul has been whispering all along. Sometimes the strongest connection is the one you can't see, but never stop feeling. Because there are memories that are not mere reflections of the past, they are living presence. They settle into the body like a part of it. They don't just belong to the past. They don't live in photo albums or dates. They live in the extended moments of silence when everything seems to be over. In that moment when someone says a familiar name, and your heart trembles without you being able to stop it. These are the memories that seem to breathe when someone wears a familiar scent, or when someone laughs in a way that reminds you of the laughter you still dream about on cold nights. Because emotions do not follow the rules of time. There are sorrows that inscribe themselves into a season that does not change, even as leaves fall and bloom again outside. You notice it when you think you've moved on, and suddenly, without warning, a part of you breaks at the sound of a single word, a song, a gesture, as if that absence refuses to fully disappear. And then you realize that it's not just sadness, it's the echo of what was left unsaid. It's the unresolved energy that continues to pulse between you and the other person. Because when a connection remains open, it becomes a channel. You don't always see it, you don't always want to see it, but you feel it. And no matter how hard you try to explain everything rationally, there is something that can't be rationalized, perhaps because it went deeper than you ever allowed yourself to admit, perhaps because it was more real than the external circumstances ever made it seem. What hurts isn't the end of the story, it's the part of you that still lives inside it. The part that didn't know how to say goodbye. The part that's still hoping for a sign. And signs do come, sometimes gently, sometimes intensely. A glance in a crowd that feels too familiar. A message sent by mistake. but it hits you right in the heart. A memory that falls from the sky like rain on dry earth. And no, this is not weakness, not fragility. It is sensitivity, the ability to feel the invisible, to receive what isn't shown, to understand the world through a more intimate, quieter channel. This intuition, which Jung so deeply valued, is not a whim. It is the soul's inner radar. It lets you know without needing to know. It guides you when everything feels confusing. It whispers to you that you're not crazy for feeling what you feel. Because yes, there is someone on the other side who feels it too. Maybe they don't say it. Maybe they deny it. But they feel it. And you sense it. In the shift of energy. In the trembling without cause. In that feeling that something brushes against you and touches your soul, as if the memory weren't an idea but a force. Because true connections don't require daily contact. They survive in the dimension of symbols. In that place where emotion becomes language, where a sigh can be a call and a tear an answer. What matters is that you learn to read these signs, not to cling to them, but to understand them, because in understanding lies liberation, and in liberation lies peace. Peace doesn't mean emotional numbness. Peace means conscious presence. It means looking at the connection with gratitude instead of pain. It means no longer searching for explanations, but accepting that there are things only the soul understands. Letting go doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop waiting. It means honoring what happened without needing it to return. It means knowing there was love, there was truth. And that alone is enough to change a life. Because some people don't come to stay forever. They come to awaken something in you that was asleep. And once it has awakened, their role is complete, even if you don't yet understand it. Maybe this person showed you what true love is. Maybe they saw you without a mask. Maybe they gave you back your belief, even if they left afterward. And yes, that hurts. But it is also a gift, because sometimes the wound that remains is the proof that something meaningful happened. And that depth, even if incomplete, is sacred. Don't run from what you feel. Don't be ashamed of your longing. Don't shrink yourself because you remember with tenderness. That tenderness is your treasure. It is what remains after love has done its work. And you are left with the essential, the sensitivity that makes you human, that connects you, that makes your soul resonate. Keep listening within. Don't lose yourself out of fear. Don't harden your soul just to avoid feeling. True strength is not in suppression, but in embrace. Not in ignoring, but in looking honestly. Because when you do that, when you allow yourself to feel everything, the love, the loss, the hope, the silence, something within you realigns. And from that realignment, a new way of being emerges, freer, calmer, more deeply connected to yourself. That is the true alchemy of the soul, to transform pain into understanding, absence into inner presence, and saudade into a bridge to yourself. And when you arrive in that space within, the space that's been waiting for you all along, you'll realize it was never the other person you were trying to bring back. It was the part of you that lit up when that connection touched your soul, the part that dared to open, to believe, to feel without limits. Because even when the story ends, something remains, your capacity to love, your ability to resonate so deeply with another person that you saw yourself in their gaze. And that isn't lost with a goodbye, it lives on in you. And if you nurture it with love, it transforms into strength, into wisdom, into compassion, especially toward yourself. Because how many times have you judged yourself? How often have you blamed yourself for feeling too much, for giving too much, thought that everything would have been different if you had been less you? But now you understand it wasn't a mistake to feel deeply. What you felt was real. And the real needs no justification. It only needs to be acknowledged, held, integrated. The scar is not a sign of weakness. It's proof that you have healed. And the feeling that still lives within you is not a sign of stagnation. It's a sign that your heart is still open, ready to learn, ready to expand even more. Maybe there will be days when nostalgia returns without warning. It hits you in the middle of the street, in a cafe, on an unremarkable afternoon. It comes with a scent, a song, a name casually spoken, and you feel it as if no time has passed, as if everything is happening again. But don't be afraid. You're not going back. You're feeling, and every time you do, consciously, with acceptance, you give space to a part of you that still wants to be seen, not to repeat the past, but to move forward with more truth, because the soul doesn't heal through escape. The soul heals through presence, through touch, through the quiet whisper, I am with you. And this inner companionship, this presence with yourself, that is the only thing that remains. Others may leave, circumstances may change, but you are there, at the center of it all. And when you learn to be a refuge to yourself, that voice without judgment, that calm amid the noise, then you no longer need anyone else to give it to you. You will give it to yourself. And when that moment comes, you will love in a new way, no longer from lack, but from abundance, no longer out of fear of losing, but from the joy of sharing. And perhaps, in the midst of your inner journey, you'll realize that other souls are also finding their way back. People who, like you, have felt, lost, searched, broken, and are now putting themselves back together. And when such souls meet, it is not out of need, but out of connection, out of the truth of knowing they are vulnerable, imperfect, human. And right there, a new way of loving is born. Slower, deeper, more real, because it's no longer about filling gaps, but about building bridges, no longer about eternal promises, but about honest presence. And maybe what you feel as nostalgia is not even a longing for what was, but for what you once promised yourself, when you loved with an open soul for the first time. That promise still lives. That desire to live authentically, to give yourself completely, to see the other without masks. It is a flame that never fully dies. You may have hidden it or silenced it, but it still burns. And every time someone touches that part of you, it flares up again. Not to burn you, but to illuminate you, to remind you that you are alive, that you can still feel, that you can still love without losing yourself. Maybe you will meet this person again, not as before, not under the same conditions, but from a different place within yourself. Or maybe you'll never see them again, and that's okay, because the most important reunion is not with the other, but with yourself, with the part of you that understands, that has healed, that has let go without forgetting, that has loved without possessing. And from that place, whatever comes next is welcome, because you no longer need validation. You know, you've felt, you've integrated, and that no one can take from you. Keep going, sensitive soul. Don't be afraid of your depth. Don't fear the echo of who you were, nor the whisper of who you might become. You are on your way. Every tear that falls with meaning, every moment of conscious silence, every emotion you allow without censorship is an open door to your inner center. And there, in that center, there is stillness, there is fire, there is life. And from there, a new version of you is born, not despite the pain, but through it. Let it grow, let it speak, let it guide you. Because in that inner voice, in that constant whisper that never leaves you, lies the strength you searched for outside for so long. And now you've found it. It was always within you. And when that voice finally becomes clear, when you can stay in the silence without running from what you feel, something inside you begins to shift. At first, barely noticeable, like a breeze quietly moving the curtains. But you sense that something has changed. You no longer need to chase answers. You no longer ask yourself, in desperation, whether they still think of you, whether they remember, whether somewhere in the corners of their world there is still a place with your name on it. You begin to understand that love is not measured by duration, but by depth, and that some encounters, though brief, shook you so deeply that they broke you into 1,000 pieces, not to destroy you, but to remake you. And as you walk through your own ruins, you pick up the pieces that matter, the ones that tell the truth about you, the ones marked by experience and no longer wishing to hide. The soul does not regenerate in haste. It heals in the sacred space of acceptance. What you were, what you felt, what you dreamed, and even what you lost, all of it is part of the emotional map you can now look at without fear. You no longer blame yourself for loving so much. You no longer punish yourself for not being able to hold on to what slipped through your fingers. Now you understand it was never about control, it was about feeling. And you felt with your whole heart. And that was real. And then a new kind of compassion begins to grow, a compassion that not only looks tenderly at your own past, but also at the other, at the person who may have hurt you, who may not have known how to love, who may have let you go when you still wanted to stay. And now, from a distance that comes from within, no longer from the wound, but from understanding, you recognize they too were lost. They too had shadows. They too did the best they could with what they had. That doesn't excuse everything, but it makes it human. And by seeing the other as human, you let go. Not because you agree with what happened, but because you no longer want to carry something that pulls you away from yourself. Forgiveness then becomes not a pardon for the other, but a liberation for yourself. And there, in this newfound freedom, you can begin to write a new story, one that does not deny your past, but is no longer bound to it, a story in which you are no longer the one who waits, who breaks because something is missing, but the one who chooses, who breathes deeply, looks out into the open, and moves on, feeling whole, free. So next time you feel a restlessness without reason or a name drifts quietly through your mind, a name you thought you had buried in silence, don't dismiss it as weakness. Maybe it's just your soul showing you where traces of life still remain, where a hidden need still longs to be felt, understood, and released. Maybe it's not a sign that you should return to someone, but to yourself. Because true healing doesn't come when you forget what was, but when what was no longer holds you back, but shapes you. And right there, at the crossroads between who you were and who you are becoming, lies your strength. The strength to love without fear, to remember without pain, to move forward with a heart that may have been wounded, but remains open. And that is, in a world that constantly teaches us to be cold, closed and fast, an act of true courage. Because what survives the silence, what endures the absence, still beats within you, softly, truly alive.
Jung's most dangerous discovery wasn't about mystical forces. It was about what happens when you trust the universe, and why this psychological shift either destroys people or transforms them into something extraordinary. In his research on individuation, Jung documented individuals who learned to trust life's process rather than fighting against it. These people discovered that when they stopped trying to control everything and started collaborating with their experiences, their entire reality shifted in impossible ways. Jung called this discovery dangerous because he found that trusting the universe without proper psychological understanding leads to spiritual bypassing, victim consciousness, or complete loss of personal agency. Yet those who learned to trust correctly experienced what he called psychological transformation, where everything in their life genuinely changed. Today, I'll reveal Jung's most dangerous discovery about differentiated trust capacity and why he believed this rare ability either makes you a victim of your own sensitivity or transforms you into a conscious collaborator with your psychological evolution. The patient who saw patterns everywhere. Jung's breakthrough came through a patient who arrived in his office describing an impossible phenomenon. This individual could predict relationship dynamics, sense career shifts before they happened, and always seemed to receive exactly the guidance they needed through seemingly random events. But here's what made this case disturbing. The patient was completely overwhelmed by their perceptions. They couldn't turn off their awareness of meaningful patterns, felt responsible for outcomes they couldn't control, and had become paralyzed by the intensity of their sensitivity to life's interconnectedness. "I see the web of meaning everywhere," the patient told Jung, "but I don't know how to live in it without losing myself." Jung realized this wasn't delusion, but a rare form of psychological perception, the ability to recognize the symbolic and developmental significance of life events in real time. The patient possessed what Jung would later call active symbolic consciousness. The transformation began when Jung helped them understand that their overwhelming sensitivity wasn't a curse, but an underdeveloped gift. They learned to work with their perceptions rather than being consumed by them, developing what Jung called conscious participation in their own psychological evolution. This case revealed that some individuals are born with heightened sensitivity to the meaningful patterns underlying life experiences, but without proper integration, this capacity becomes a source of overwhelm rather than wisdom. The differentiated trust system. Jung discovered that individuals with differentiated trust capacity operate through three distinct psychological mechanisms that most people don't possess or develop. Symbolic pattern recognition. These individuals automatically perceive the psychological significance of events, relationships, and circumstances. They read life symbolically, seeing the developmental themes and unconscious patterns playing out through their experiences. Unlike random pattern seeking, this involves recognizing genuine archetypal dynamics and psychological processes as they manifest through daily life. Synchronistic sensitivity. Jung found they experience meaningful coincidences not as occasional events, but as regular communication from their unconscious about their psychological development needs and direction. This creates a constant dialogue between their conscious choices and unconscious wisdom, mediated through the circumstances that arise in their life. Integration pressure. Most significantly, Jung discovered these individuals feel compelled to integrate their insights into conscious action. They can't simply observe patterns. They must respond to them and allow them to guide their psychological development. This creates what Jung called existential intensity, the burden and gift of being unable to live unconsciously once you've developed the capacity to perceive life's meaningful patterns. The social persecution complex. But Jung's most disturbing discovery was how society responds to people with differentiated trust capacity. He documented a systematic pattern of rejection, misunderstanding, and persecution that explained why these individuals often become isolated or develop psychological problems. The rationality police. Jung found that people with differentiated trust capacity face constant pressure to explain their perceptions through purely rational frameworks. Others demand scientific proof for their insights about meaningful patterns, treating their symbolic awareness as delusion rather than a different form of intelligence. The control addiction conflict. Jung documented how their ability to trust life's process threatens others who rely on rigid control for security. Their ease with uncertainty and change triggers anxiety in people who need predictability, leading to rejection or attempts to convince them they're being naive or irresponsible. The spiritual materialism trap. Most dangerously, Jung observed that New Age or spiritual communities often exploit their sensitivity, encouraging magical thinking and passive dependency, rather than supporting the psychological maturity their capacity requires. This creates a cruel irony. The very sensitivity that could contribute to collective psychological evolution becomes grounds for social rejection or spiritual manipulation. Jung wrote, "Those who possess the capacity for conscious trust in life's psychological process often find themselves strangers in a world that demands either complete control or total surrender when they naturally inhabit the space between." 4 types of differentiated trust. Jung identified 4 distinct expressions of differentiated trust capacity, each with unique challenges and development paths. The overwhelmed receiver. These individuals feel everything but lack boundaries or processing skills. They absorb meaning from every experience, but can't distinguish between their psychological projections and genuine insights. Often become hermits or develop anxiety disorders from information overload. They need to develop discrimination skills and learn to protect their energy while maintaining their sensitivity. The resistant controller, born with trust capacity, but terrified of it due to social conditioning or trauma. They alternate between moments of profound insight and periods of forcing rigid control over their life. Often successful externally, but internally conflicted. Their development involves learning to gradually release control without falling into passivity, building confidence in their own psychological wisdom. The spiritual bypasser uses their capacity for meaningful pattern recognition to avoid dealing with practical responsibilities or difficult emotions. Treats synchronicity as cosmic validation rather than psychological guidance for growth. They must learn to ground their insights in personal responsibility and use their sensitivity to support rather than escape psychological development. The integrated collaborator has learned to use their differentiated trust capacity as a tool for conscious psychological development. They recognize meaningful patterns while maintaining personal agency, using life experiences as guidance for growth while taking full responsibility for their choices. They demonstrate mature trust that enhances rather than replaces rational thinking and personal responsibility. Why it's dangerous. The integration failure costs. Jung identified why differentiated trust capacity becomes dangerous when improperly integrated, leading to psychological breakdown, social isolation, or spiritual inflation. The meaning addiction crisis. Jung warned that people with this capacity can become addicted to seeking meaning in every experience, losing their ability to simply live without constant psychological analysis. They turn their gift into a compulsion that prevents spontaneous engagement with life. The responsibility confusion trap. Without proper boundaries, these individuals often feel responsible for outcomes they can't control, believing their insights or energy somehow determines what happens to others. This creates crushing guilt and anxiety when negative events occur. The isolation spiral. Because their perceptions differ from conventional thinking, they often withdraw from relationships rather than learning to communicate their insights appropriately. This isolation reinforces their sensitivity while cutting them off from grounding influences. The inflation danger. Jung observed that some develop superiority complexes about their capacity, believing they're more evolved than others who don't share their sensitivity. This spiritual pride prevents continued learning and authentic connection. Most dangerously, Jung found that when differentiated trust capacity remains unintegrated, it can lead to complete psychological breakdown as the person becomes unable to function in a world that doesn't validate their perceptions. Jung's integration method, conscious trust development. Jung developed specific techniques for integrating differentiated trust capacity without falling into the common traps that destroy people with this sensitivity. Discrimination training. Jung taught individuals to distinguish between genuine, meaningful patterns and psychological projection. This involves learning to verify insights through multiple sources, examining their emotional attachments to particular interpretations and developing what he called educated intuition. The goal isn't to eliminate sensitivity, but to refine it, becoming more accurate in reading the psychological significance of life events. Grounded mysticism practice. Jung insisted that meaningful pattern recognition must be balanced with practical action and rational thinking. He taught individuals to use their insights as additional information for decision-making rather than primary guidance. This involves maintaining careers, relationships, and responsibilities while allowing their sensitivity to enhance rather than replace conventional life skills. Shadow integration work. Jung found that differentiated trust capacity often develops as compensation for early trauma or rejection. Individuals must examine their unconscious motivations for seeking meaning and control, integrating the parts of themselves they've rejected. Without shadow work, their capacity becomes a spiritual defense rather than genuine development. Community boundary skills. Jung taught specific techniques for maintaining their sensitivity while navigating social environments that don't understand their perceptions. This includes learning to communicate insights appropriately and finding people who can appreciate their capacity without exploiting it. Historical examples, integration, success versus failure. Jung's analysis of historical figures reveals the difference between integrated and unintegrated differentiated trust capacity. Integration success. Marcus Aurelius. The Roman emperor demonstrated integrated differentiated trust through his Stoic philosophy. He perceived the meaningful patterns in political and personal challenges while maintaining full responsibility for his responses. His meditations show someone who trusted life's process while taking decisive action based on philosophical principles. Aurelius used his sensitivity to psychological and political patterns to guide his leadership while never abandoning rational analysis or practical responsibility. Integration. Success. Maya Angelou. Angelou demonstrated how differentiated trust capacity can transform trauma into wisdom. She perceived the psychological and spiritual significance of her experiences while maintaining agency in how she responded to them. Her work shows someone who found meaning in suffering without becoming passive or victimized. Her integration involved using her sensitivity to help others while building practical skills and maintaining boundaries. Integration failure. Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche possessed profound sensitivity to cultural and psychological patterns, but lacked the integration skills to handle his perceptions. His insights became increasingly disconnected from practical life, leading to isolation, grandiosity, and eventual psychological breakdown. His failure demonstrates how unintegrated, differentiated trust capacity can lead to brilliance without wisdom, insight without stability. Critical success factors. Jung identified that successful integration requires maintaining practical life skills, developing community connections, balancing insight with action, and avoiding both spiritual materialism and rationalistic dismissal of their capacity. Building trust-based communities. Jung recognized that people with differentiated trust capacity need specific types of community support to develop healthily and avoid the isolation that often destroys them. Recognition signals. Jung taught individuals to recognize others with similar capacity through specific indicators: comfort with meaningful coincidences, ability to discuss psychological development seriously, balance between insight and action, and resistance to both rigid materialism and magical thinking. Healthy companions demonstrate integrated trust rather than either control addiction or passive dependency. Avoiding toxic spiritual communities. Jung warned against groups that exploit sensitivity through magical thinking, encourage disconnection from practical responsibility, promote spiritual superiority over unawakened others, or discourage critical thinking about their beliefs. These communities often attract people with differentiated trust capacity but prevent their healthy development. Creating integration support networks. Jung advocated for finding people engaged in psychological development work who can appreciate sensitivity without encouraging spiritual bypassing. These individuals support both personal responsibility and meaningful pattern recognition. Such communities include therapists familiar with depth psychology, artists and writers exploring meaning in their work, and others walking the integration path between mystical sensitivity and practical wisdom. The transformation process. Jung documented predictable stages that individuals with differentiated trust capacity experience as they learn to integrate their sensitivity constructively. Stage 1. Overwhelm recognition. Individuals acknowledge that their sensitivity to meaningful patterns has become overwhelming rather than helpful, often after a crisis that forces them to examine their relationship with their perceptions. Stage 2. Discrimination development. They learn to distinguish between genuine insights and psychological projections, developing skills to verify their perceptions and avoid getting lost in endless meaning-seeking. Stage 3. Grounding integration. Individuals develop the ability to maintain their sensitivity while building practical life skills, careers, and relationships that aren't dependent on others sharing their perceptions. Stage 4. Conscious collaboration. They learn to use their capacity as a tool for psychological development rather than an identity or source of specialness, collaborating with their own growth process while maintaining full personal responsibility. Stage 5. Cultural contribution. Jung's final stage represents individuals who have learned to share their insights appropriately, contributing to collective psychological development while maintaining healthy boundaries and avoiding spiritual inflation. If you've learned to use your sensitivity as a tool rather than an identity, comment, "I'm developing conscious trust." Integration, pitfalls, development traps. Jung identified specific traps that prevent successful integration of differentiated trust capacity, warning about approaches that...
Do you know the difference between a woman who just has sex and a woman who truly connects intimately with her partner? Communication. And no, I'm not talking about those deep conversations before or after. I'm talking about what you say in that exact moment when you're together, when everything is happening. For years, many of us have grown up with the idea that talking during sex is inappropriate, that decent women don't do it, or that if we express what we really feel, we might come off as too intense. But here's what no one tells you. The right words, said at the right moment, have the power to completely transform not only that encounter, but the entire dynamic of your intimate relationship. After years of experience and listening to hundreds of women in couples therapy, I've discovered there's a massive difference between women who manage to keep the spark alive for years and those who feel the passion fading. And that difference isn't about age, it's not about the body, it's not about how long they've been together, it's about how they communicate during intimacy. You who have lived enough know exactly what I mean when I talk about those relationships that start with fireworks and end up mechanical. Those nights where everything feels predictable, where you already know exactly what's going to happen and how it's going to end. And yes, it's normal for things to change over time, but it doesn't have to become boring or routine. But before we get into it, I need you to understand something fundamental. What I'm going to share with you isn't about manipulative techniques or cheap tricks. These are tools for intimate communication that work because they're based on something very real. Genuine emotional connection. And please, everything we're about to discuss requires consent, respect, and open communication. Nothing should make you feel uncomfortable or pressured. Now, let me tell you something that surprised me when I started researching this topic. Most intimacy issues in mature couples don't come from a lack of technique or experience. They come from fear. Fear of expressing what they really feel, fear of seeming too intense, fear of judgment, fear of comparison. And this fear is especially strong in women of our generation because we were raised with so many taboos around female sexuality. But here's the truth I've learned after so many years. Your partner wants to hear you. He wants to know that what he's doing affects you, moves you, excites you. Men, especially, respond strongly to visual and auditory validation. They need to know they're doing it right, that they're giving you real pleasure. And here's what truly fascinates me about this. It's not just about giving him what he needs. It's about allowing yourself to experience intimacy in a completely new way. When you finally give yourself permission to express what you feel, when you stop censoring yourself, when you allow your voice to be part of the experience, something magical happens. Your own pleasure intensifies exponentially. Why? Because when you vocalize what you're feeling, your brain processes that experience more intensely. It's like you're living the moment twice, once physically and once verbally. This dual stimulation creates a positive feedback loop that elevates the entire experience to a completely different level. But there's also something deeply liberating about using your voice during intimacy. Many of us have spent decades being polite, being proper, controlling our reactions, measuring our responses. The bedroom might be the only place where you can truly be completely free, completely authentic, completely unfiltered. And this freedom doesn't just feel amazing in the moment, it also has lasting effects on your self-esteem and your relationship with your own sexuality. When you allow yourself to be expressive, when you celebrate your own pleasure without guilt or shame, you're sending a powerful message to your subconscious. You deserve pleasure. Your sexuality is beautiful. Your joy matters. Now, before I share with you the specific phrases that can change everything, we need to talk about preparation. Because yes, this requires a bit of groundwork. You can't just show up one night and start saying completely different things without having laid the proper foundation. The first thing you need to do is create an atmosphere of openness outside the bedroom. And no, I'm not suggesting a super formal or technical conversation. You can start subtly during coffee, while walking, when you're both relaxed. Ask him what he likes to hear, if he feels comfortable with verbal communication during intimacy. Many times we assume we know what our partner likes after years together, but the truth is that preferences change, people evolve, and what worked 5 years ago might not be the same anymore. So this initial conversation not only gives you valuable information, but also opens the door for him to be more expressive with you. And here's something many women don't consider. This conversation is also your chance to set your own boundaries and preferences. You can share what kind of communication you like to hear, what words turn you on, what phrases make you feel uncomfortable. It's an exchange, not just an interview. The second step, and this is something that works incredibly well, is to use text messages as a testing ground. Yes, sexting, but adapted to your age and context. I'm not talking about sending compromising photos or anything that makes you uncomfortable. I'm talking about messages that build anticipation for the encounter. For example, during the day, you might text something like, "Tonight, I want you to do that thing I love," or "I'm thinking about how it feels to touch you." These messages serve as a thermometer. His reaction will tell you a lot about how receptive he is to this kind of more direct communication. And here's something super important that many women don't realize. Intimate text messages not only build anticipation, they also give you practice. They help you find your voice, discover which words feel natural and which ones make you uncomfortable. It's like a rehearsal before the main event. They also let you experiment with different levels of intensity. You can start with very subtle messages and gradually get more direct, depending on how he responds. It's a safe way to explore this new territory without the pressure of the immediate intimate moment. But here's what really makes sexting effective as preparation. It helps you overcome that internal voice that says you shouldn't express yourself in certain ways. When you write these things, when you see them written out, when you get a positive response, your brain starts to understand that it's okay to express your sexuality, that it's safe to be authentic about what you desire. Now let's talk about the 3 phrases that can completely transform your intimate experience. But before I share them with you, I want you to understand why they work. These phrases aren't magical by themselves. They work because they speak to three fundamental psychological needs we all have: validation, connection, and admiration. Validation is the need to know that we're doing it right, that we're giving pleasure, that our efforts are appreciated. Connection is the feeling that we're truly united with our partner, not just physically, but emotionally. And admiration is knowing that we are desired, that we're special, that we have something unique to offer. When you understand these underlying needs, you can use these phrases not as mechanical formulas, but as authentic expressions of what you're truly experiencing. And that authenticity is what makes them so powerful. The first phrase, and this is probably the most powerful of all, is, "You feel delicious." And yes, I know it might sound a little strange at first, especially if you're not used to expressing yourself verbally during intimacy. But let me explain why this phrase is so effective. First of all, it's completely universal. It doesn't matter if your partner is a man or a woman, it doesn't matter the position, it doesn't matter the specific moment of the encounter. This phrase always works because it speaks directly to the physical sensations you're experiencing. When you say you feel delicious, you're communicating that physical contact with them is giving you real pleasure. You're talking about textures, about temperature, about the way their body feels against yours. And this is incredibly powerful because it's not generic or cliché. It's specific to that moment, to that exact feeling. But here's what really makes this phrase special. It immediately boosts your partner's self-esteem. You're telling them that not only do you like what they're doing, but that their body, their physical presence bring you pleasure. It's personal, it's intimate, it's pure validation. And there's something else that makes this phrase particularly effective. It uses sensory language. It's not intellectual, it's not abstract emotion. It's completely physical and visceral. When they hear "you feel delicious," their brain immediately connects with the physical sensations of the present moment. Now, and this is super important, you should know that when you use this phrase, your partner will most likely increase the rhythm. This happens because men tend to interpret expressions of pleasure as a signal that they should intensify what they're doing. It's instinctive. They want to keep going. You can also reinforce the message with your body language. Keep your hands on him in a way that guides him to maintain the rhythm. Move your body in a way that supports the pattern you want to continue. Non-verbal communication can be just as powerful as words. And here's a very important detail about timing. You should only use this phrase when you're actually close to orgasm. If you use it too early in the encounter, it might speed up his process and cause him to finish before you've had time to fully build your own arousal. We who already have experience know that timing in intimacy is crucial. It's not like in the movies where everything happens simultaneously and perfectly. In real life, we need communication, we need guidance, and we need patience. It's also important to understand that this phrase has a powerful psychological effect on you as well. When you say "don't stop," you're taking control of your own experience. You're actively directing your own pleasure. And that sense of empowerment can significantly intensify your experience. Many women have been conditioned to be passive during sex, to just receive whatever is given without specifically asking for what they need. Using this phrase is an act of reclaiming your own sexual agency. You're saying that your pleasure matters, that you have the right to guide the experience toward what works for you. The third phrase, and this is my personal favorite, is "you drive me wild." And yes, I know it sounds a bit casual, but that's exactly why it works so well. It's authentic, it's real, it's the kind of thing a woman says when she's truly losing control. This phrase is incredibly powerful because it does something few expressions achieve. It completely personalizes the experience. You're not saying that you feel good in general. You're not saying that the sex is nice. You're saying that he, specifically he, is the one driving you crazy with desire. Do you see the difference? It's the difference between "this feels good" and "you drive me wild." One is about the activity, the other is about him as a person, as a lover, as the one responsible for everything you're feeling. When a woman tells a man, "you drive me wild," she's speaking directly to his ego in the most positive way possible. She's telling him that he's special, that he has something that transforms her, that he is the one who awakens that wild and passionate side of her. This works on multiple levels. On an emotional level, it makes him feel unique and desired. On a psychological level, it reinforces his masculinity and his confidence. And on a physical level, that validation translates into more energy, more intensity, more connection. But there's something deeper happening here. This phrase is also a declaration about your own sexuality. You're admitting that you have a wild side, a side that can lose control, a side that can be completely consumed by desire. And that's incredibly liberating. When many women, especially those of us raised with conservative ideas about female sexuality, have parts of ourselves that we've kept hidden or repressed. This phrase is a way of giving those parts permission to come out and be expressed. You can use this phrase at different moments, during foreplay, while tension is building, in the middle of the act when you're truly feeling that loss of control, even afterwards, as a way to reinforce how incredible the experience was. You can also adapt it to suit your personality and your relationship. Some women prefer softer versions like, "You drive me crazy," or "You make me lose myself." Others feel more authentic, using more intense expressions. What matters is that it's genuine for you. And here's what I find most beautiful about this phrase. It acknowledges that great sex is co-created. It's not something he does to you or you do to him. It's something you create together, where one person's response fuels the other's passion in a continuous cycle of pleasure and connection. But here's what really makes these phrases transformative. It's not just what you say, but how you say it. Your tone of voice, your facial expression, your body language, all of it must align with the words. If you say, "You feel delicious," with a flat voice and no emotion, it won't have the same impact as if you say it with genuine pleasure and admiration. And here's something I've learned after years of working with couples. Authenticity can't be faked. Your partner will know whether you're truly feeling what you're saying. That's why it's so important to use these phrases only when you really feel them, only when they're a genuine expression of what you're experiencing. Emotional authenticity has an energetic quality that's impossible to replicate. When you truly feel what you're saying, when the words come from a genuine experience, they carry a power that transcends language. Your partner doesn't just hear the words, they feel the truth behind them. And that emotional truth is what creates the deep connection we all long for. It's not just physical sex, it's real intimacy. It's the difference between having an encounter and creating an experience that both of you will remember and treasure. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, "But I feel embarrassed to talk like that," or "I'm not sure how my partner will react," or "What if he judges me or thinks I'm too intense?" And these concerns are completely valid. Many of us were raised with the idea that good women don't express their sexuality openly. But here's what I've learned. True intimacy requires vulnerability. And vulnerability is scary, especially when it comes to something as personal as sexuality. Yet, that shared vulnerability is exactly what creates the deep connection we're all searching for. If your partner judges you for expressing your pleasure, for communicating what you feel, for being authentic in intimacy, then you're not the problem. The problem is that you don't have the right partner for this level of emotional intimacy. A mature partner, one who truly loves and desires you, will receive your expressiveness as the gift that it is. He'll understand that when you open up in that way, when you share your intimate experience so directly, you're giving him access to a very private and special part of yourself. And if you're in a long-term relationship where you've never been very verbally expressive, your partner might be surprised at first. That's normal. But if the relationship is solid, if there's love and communication, that surprise will quickly turn into excitement and gratitude. But I also want you to know that you don't have to change overnight. If you've never been very expressive during intimacy, don't expect to transform completely in one night. It's a process, an evolution. You can start slowly with more audible sighs, more expressive moans, simpler words. What matters is that it's genuine. A heartfelt yes is better than an elaborate phrase that doesn't feel real. Your partner will connect far more with your emotional honesty than with any perfect but empty technique. And speaking of honesty, I need to say something you may not want to hear, but it's fundamental. Verbal communication during sex is not going to save a relationship that already has serious problems. If there's a lack of respect, if there's infidelity, if there are deep communication issues, these techniques might help temporarily, but they won't solve the root problems. What they can do is strengthen a relationship that already has a solid foundation. They can add a new dimension to intimacy that is already healthy. They can help keep the passion alive in a couple that loves each other but may have fallen into routine. I also want you to understand that every couple is different. What works incredibly well with one person may not have the same effect with another. That's why that initial conversation I mentioned at the beginning is so important. You need to get to know your partner, understand their preferences, and respect their boundaries. Some people are very visual and respond strongly to verbal expressions. Others are more tactile and prefer communication through touch. Some are naturally expressive, others are more reserved. There is no one-size-fits-all formula. But here's what is universal: the need for connection, for validation, for knowing that we are desired and that we're giving pleasure. We all have those needs, regardless of age, gender, or experience. And this brings me to something very important that I want you to understand. Using your voice during intimacy is not just for your partner's benefit, it's also for you. When you express what you feel, when you verbalize your pleasure, you allow yourself to experience intimacy more fully. There's something incredibly freeing about being able to say exactly what you're feeling, about not holding anything back, about not needing to be appropriate or proper, about being fully authentic in one of the most vulnerable and intimate moments of your life. And that authenticity has a huge effect on your sexual experience. When you're not worried about how you look or how you sound, when you're not censoring your natural reactions, you can fully surrender to the moment. You can experience levels of pleasure you might not have known were possible. But there's also a deeper psychological aspect. When you use your voice during sex, you're reclaiming your sexual agency. You're affirming that your pleasure matters, that you have the right to guide the experience, that you are an active participant in the creation of this intimacy. For many women, especially those raised with restrictive ideas about female sexuality, this can be deeply healing. It's a way of rewriting old messages about what's appropriate or acceptable for a woman. Now, I want to talk about something many women our age face: comparison. Especially if your partner has had previous relationships, it's natural to wonder how you measure up, what they did that you don't, whether you were as good as them. And I need you to hear this very clearly. Comparison is the enemy of intimacy. When you're in your head comparing yourself to others, you can't be present in your body experiencing the moment. When you're worried about whether you're enough, you can't enjoy what you truly are. The truth is that true intimacy isn't about being better than someone else. It's about being fully yourself with someone who loves you exactly as you are. It's about creating something unique between the two of you, something that doesn't exist with anyone else, because you are unique together. And this is especially true for mature women. You don't have to compete with younger women. You don't have to pretend to be something you're not. What you have that they don't is experience, self-awareness, and confidence in who you are. A woman in her 40s, 50s, or 60s who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to ask for it is infinitely more attractive than a young woman who is insecure and doesn't yet know herself. Your emotional maturity, your ability to communicate, your freedom from youthful insecurities, all of these are huge advantages. So use those advantages. Use your self-knowledge to communicate exactly what you need. Use your life experience to create real intimacy, not just physical, but emotional. Use your confidence to be authentic, to be vulnerable, to be real. And here's something incredibly important. The phrases we've been talking about are just the beginning. They're the gateway to deeper, richer, intimate communication. Once you feel comfortable expressing yourself verbally, you can begin exploring other forms of communication. You can start talking about fantasies, about specific desires, about things you've always wanted to try but never dared to mention. You can give more specific guidance. You can ask for exactly what you need. You can share your boundaries and your preferences. This open and honest communication is what sets mature intimacy apart from youthful intimacy. When you're young, much of sex is instinctive. It's about exploration and discovery. When you're mature, it can be intentional, it can be specific, it can be exactly what you want it to be. And that is incredibly powerful. It means you don't have to settle for mediocre experiences. It means you don't have to pretend to like something when you don't. It means you can create exactly the intimate life you want to have. But it also means you have the responsibility to communicate what you want. You can't expect your partner to read your mind. You can't get frustrated about something they're not doing if you've never asked for it. Clear, direct communication is the foundation of all good intimacy. And here's something many women don't realize. Sexual communication isn't just about the act itself. It's also about the conversations before and after. It's about creating a general atmosphere of openness and honesty in your relationship. That means talking about sex when you're not having sex. It means discussing what worked well after an encounter. It means sharing fantasies while you're out for a walk. It means creating a safe space where both of you can express desires, concerns, and curiosities. These conversations may feel awkward at first, especially if you've never had them before. But with practice, they become natural. And the impact they have on your intimate life is extraordinary. When there's open communication outside the bedroom, communication inside the bedroom flows much more easily. When you've already talked about preferences and boundaries in a relaxed setting, it's much easier to apply that knowledge during intimacy. And vice versa, when you start being more expressive verbally during sex, it becomes easier to have deep conversations about sexuality at other times. It's a self-reinforcing cycle. But I also want to be very clear about something. All of this requires having the right partner. A partner who respects you, who values your communication, who is just as interested in your pleasure as in their own. If your partner isn't willing to listen to you, if they get upset when you express your needs, if they'd rather you stay silent, then maybe you need to evaluate whether that's truly the right relationship for you. Because here's the truth, you deserve incredible intimacy. You deserve a partner who celebrates your expressiveness, who gets excited when you share what you feel, who does everything they can to give you pleasure. You don't have to settle for less just because of your age or the length of your relationship. In fact, I firmly believe that mature women deserve the best intimacy of our lives. We've spent enough time learning what we don't want. We've had enough mediocre experiences. It's time to have exactly what we do want. And that means not just using these phrases, it means building an entire culture of open communication in your relationship. It means talking about sex outside the bedroom. It also means discussing fantasies, preferences, and boundaries. It means being honest about what works and what doesn't. It might sound intimidating at first, especially if you've been together for a long time and have never had these kinds of conversations. But I promise you, it's worth it. The intimacy you can create when both partners are willing to be completely honest and communicative is extraordinary. And I'm not just talking about physical intimacy. I mean that deep emotional connection that happens when two people can be completely vulnerable with each other, when they can share not only their bodies, but also their most intimate desires, their most secret fantasies, their most specific needs. That's the kind of intimacy that builds lasting, fulfilling relationships. That's the kind of intimacy that keeps passion alive after years together. And it all begins with small steps, like learning to use your voice during sex. I also want to talk about something that's especially relevant for women in our stage of life: sexual reinvention. Many of us have gone through significant changes: divorces, loss of partners, kids moving out, hormonal shifts. These changes can be incredible opportunities to rediscover and redefine our sexuality. If you're starting a new relationship after many years in a previous one, this is the perfect time to implement this kind of communication from the beginning. You don't have to carry forward old patterns or dynamics that no longer serve you. You can create something completely new and authentic. And if you're in a long-term relationship, these changes in communication can be like renewing your vows. But in the bedroom, They can revitalize a connection that had become predictable and bring new energy to something that may have felt stagnant. But there's something deeper here. When you start to use your voice this way, when you allow yourself to be expressive and authentic, you're also modeling a kind of intimacy for your partner. You're giving him implicit permission to be more expressive, more vulnerable, more communicative too. Many men, especially those from our generation, were also raised with restrictive ideas about emotional expression. They too may be holding things back, suppressing natural responses, feeling like they have to maintain a certain level of control or composure. When you open up, when you show that it's safe to be authentic in intimacy, you're giving an incredible gift. You're showing him that he can drop the mask, that he can be fully present and real with you. And this is exactly where the greatest power of this journey lies. When two people truly open up to each other, when they let go of shame, fear, and old patterns, that's when space is created for intimacy that doesn't just satisfy the body, but also nourishes the soul. It's no longer just about pleasure. It's about deep recognition, emotional closeness, the feeling of being seen, heard, and accepted without a mask. And that is what we all truly seek, regardless of age. So don't wait for the perfect conditions to magically appear. Start now with one sincere sentence, with one look, with one yes that comes from deep within. Your sexuality, your ability to connect, your power to communicate, it's all already within you. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for perfection. Just begin and allow yourself to live the intimacy you truly deserve.
You've probably heard it a lot, that love completes you. But what if that's actually one of the biggest red flags? What if real connection isn't about becoming one, but staying two? A lot of us grew up with this idea that a true relationship is when someone fills your missing pieces, like two halves finally forming a whole. It's poetic, sure, but also deeply misleading. Because when you enter love from a place of lack, you're not meeting someone as you are. You're handing them a job. Fix me. And that's where most relationships start to break. They look perfect on the outside. Vacation photos, my person captions, matching tattoos. But underneath, it's two people clinging to each other to avoid their own reflection. The relationship becomes a patch, not a platform. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who gave us concepts like the shadow, individuation, and the collective unconscious, believed that the soul's goal isn't to merge with another, but to fully realize itself. And paradoxically, that's what allows for real love. Not needing the other to fill you up, but choosing them because you're full already. This video is going to walk you through 10 signs of a genuine and healthy relationship, guided by Jung's depth psychology and infused with insights from modern consciousness work. But this isn't just about theory or feel-good advice. These signs might actually challenge what you've been taught about love, what you think it should look like, and how it should feel. So, stay with me till the end, because the last few signs might turn everything you think you know about relationships upside down. Let's begin with the first sign. 1. You're not trying to complete each other. The idea of completion is romanticized in pop culture, but in Jungian terms, it's a misunderstanding of wholeness. Jung believed that each person contains both masculine and feminine energies, the animus and anima. We're born with everything we need to become whole. The journey is inward, not outward. So when you're in a healthy relationship, you're not looking to be completed. You're not searching for someone to save you from loneliness or your own insecurities. Instead, you're two whole people choosing to walk alongside each other, not leaning on one another out of need, but sharing the path out of love. This kind of relationship feels different. There's less pressure, less fear of loss, less obsession with fixing or molding each other. You both know, I'm not half, I'm whole, and so are you. 2. You grow through your triggers. Let's be real. Being in love doesn't mean you won't get triggered. In fact, real intimacy will bring your stuff up. That's the gift. Jung called this the shadow, all the parts of ourselves we've rejected, denied, or disowned. And relationships are mirrors. They reflect our shadows with uncomfortable clarity. But in a genuine relationship, triggers aren't seen as threats, they're seen as invitations. You don't run from discomfort, you use it to grow. Instead of blaming your partner, you ask, "What is this showing me about myself?" Growth becomes shared, not just tolerated. Before we continue, if you're someone who loves expanding your mind and exploring the deeper layers of life, make sure to subscribe to Fractal Wisdom so you never miss a journey like this. And stay until the end of the video. Because when we get to sign number 10, you might finally understand why the healthiest love is the one where you never lose yourself in the first place. And now, let's continue to sign number 3. Your shadows are safe here. Most people only show their polished parts in love, the kind, funny, charming surface. But your shadow, that's the raw, authentic, vulnerable, and tender stuff underneath. The insecurities, the jealousy, the fear of being too much or not enough. Jung said the shadow isn't something bad we must get rid of. It's just unacknowledged. And when we push it away, it doesn't disappear. It shows up in our relationships. But in a genuine relationship, you don't have to hide. There's room for all of you. Your weirdness, your childhood wounds, your contradictions. You don't feel like you need to be on your best behavior 24/7. Because real love isn't about performing. It's about being seen, even when you're unraveling a little, and still being met with softness. When both people allow their shadows to come out without judgment, healing happens in real time. You stop wearing masks, you stop pretending, you feel free. And that freedom is what makes the love deeper, not weaker. 4. You support each other's individuation. One of Carl Jung's core teachings was that each person's true psychological and spiritual goal is individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. Not who society expects you to be, not who your parents raised you to be, but the unique expression of your deepest self. In unhealthy relationships, individuation feels threatening. Your growth might scare your partner. Your change is seen as betrayal. You're expected to shrink, stay the same, or limit your evolution to keep things comfortable. But in a conscious, healthy bond, your evolution is encouraged. Not only is it allowed, it's celebrated. You support each other's paths, even when they diverge. There's no fear of outgrowing each other because you're both committed to becoming your most authentic selves, with or without each other. That kind of freedom within connection, that's where the magic lives. 5. Silence isn't awkward. Let's talk about being quiet, because silence in relationships often gets misunderstood. People think if the conversation pauses, something's wrong, that it means you're growing apart or getting bored. But actually, silence can be one of the most sacred signs of closeness. In a real connection, you don't need constant noise to feel okay. You can sit in stillness without needing to fill the air. There's no performance, no pressure to entertain, just presence. A quiet, shared understanding. That level of comfort comes when both people feel safe, not just to talk, but to not talk. To rest in each other's energy without scrambling for words. In Jungian psychology, this speaks to a deeper merging of the conscious and unconscious, the unspoken harmony beneath the surface. 6. You don't idolize each other. This might sound strange at first because, isn't it good to admire your partner? Of course. Respect, admiration, and gratitude are essential. But idolization? That's something else. When you idolize someone, you don't see them. You see a projection. You craft a fantasy and pour it over a real, imperfect person. You expect them to be your savior, your perfect parent, your source of eternal validation. And when they can't live up to that, the fall is hard. Jung warned us about this. He talked about projections, how we often cast our unconscious desires or wounds onto others. We don't love them. We love the idea of them. And this projection eventually collapses, leading to disappointment, resentment, or even betrayal. In a healthy relationship, though, you deconstruct the pedestal. You allow your partner to be human, flawed, evolving. You don't need them to be perfect, just real. You love them with their wounds, not in spite of them, and they love you back the same way. This mutual de-idolization is powerful. It means you're no longer trapped in illusion. You're relating soul to soul, not ego to ego. 7. There's a shared sense of purpose. This is one of those signs that often goes unnoticed in the early stages, but it becomes vital as the relationship matures. See, a genuine relationship isn't just two people vibing or living parallel lives under the same roof. There's an underlying why, a shared mission. It doesn't have to be grand or spiritual, although it absolutely can be. It might be building a home, supporting each other's healing, raising conscious children, or creating something meaningful for the world. When your lives align with purpose, your love deepens. You're not just in it for comfort or chemistry. You're building something that matters. You're serving something bigger than your egos. Jung would say this touches the transpersonal, the archetypal. Love becomes a vessel, not just for connection, but for contribution. And when things get tough, and they will, that shared purpose becomes an anchor. It reminds you why you're here together. It gives the relationship depth, direction, and soul. 8. You're honest, even when it's hard. This one's non-negotiable, because without honesty, there's no intimacy, only performance. In unconscious relationships, we tend to hide the truth to keep the peace. We tell little lies to avoid conflict, or big ones to protect our image. And the result? Emotional distance, resentment, and quiet corrosion. Healthy relationships do it differently. You speak your truth, even when it shakes things, even when your voice trembles, and even when it risks discomfort. Not because you want to provoke, but because you value authenticity over ease. And real honesty isn't just about the facts, it's about emotional transparency. I feel disconnected lately. I'm afraid I'm losing myself. I'm struggling, and I need your presence. This level of honesty isn't easy. It requires both partners to hold space, to not react defensively, but to listen with openness and curiosity. Jung talked about this too. The ability to face our inner truth and witness it in others without flinching. When two people can be honest and still feel safe, that's emotional alchemy, and that's spiritual partnership. 9. You can sit with each other's pain without needing to fix it. Most of us were taught that love means rescuing. If your partner is in pain, you're supposed to fix it, solve it, cheer them up. But here's the truth. Most of the time, we don't actually want solutions. We just want space. Safe space. Non-judgmental space. Someone who can hold us without rushing our healing. Carl Jung believed that healing often comes from integration, not interruption. And when you're in pain, it's not always a problem to be solved. It's a part of you rising to be held. In a healthy relationship, your partner doesn't panic when you're struggling. They don't try to slap a band-aid on your emotional wounds. They don't silence you with positive vibes only. Instead, they sit with you. They stay with you. They witness you. They say, I don't have to fix you. I just have to be here. This kind of presence is medicine, and it changes everything. Because when someone can hold space for your darkness without flinching, that's when real trust is born. 10. You don't lose yourself in the relationship. This might be the most important one of all. Because so many people, in the name of love, abandon themselves. They shrink, they shapeshift, they slowly become a stranger in their own life. And it doesn't happen all at once. It's subtle. You stop doing things you love. You water down your truth to keep the peace. You say yes when you mean no. You give more than you have. Until one day, you wake up and realize you've disappeared. But real love doesn't erase you. It amplifies you. A genuine, conscious relationship makes you more yourself, not less. It invites your fullness. It honors your boundaries. It celebrates your individuality. It says, I love you as you are, not as I need you to be. Jung would say, this is the ultimate integration of opposites, union without fusion. You merge paths, but not identities. You walk together, not on top of each other. You belong to yourself, even in love. And that is the foundation of everything. So, let's take a breath here. If you've ever been in a relationship that left you feeling smaller, more confused, more disconnected from who you are, it's okay. That's part of the journey too. Sometimes we need to lose ourselves to learn how to come home. But now you have the signs. Not rules, not checkboxes, but reflections of what love can really be when it's rooted in soul and awareness. Love that holds your shadow. Love that honors your truth. Love that doesn't try to save you, but simply walks beside you. And yes, these kinds of relationships are rare, but they're not impossible. They begin when you begin showing up like this, for yourself first and then for others. You teach the world how to love you by how you love yourself. If this resonated with you, and if you're on a path of becoming more conscious, more whole, and more alive, then make sure to subscribe to Fractal Wisdom. This channel is here to challenge illusions, expand your mind, and remind you of what you already know deep down. You are already whole, and the love you deserve won't ask you to forget that. Thank you for being here. Stay curious, stay true, and most importantly, stay you.
Forget everything you think you know about attraction. Really, forget it. Because you've been sold a well-packaged lie in every movie, every song, every magazine tip. The lie that you need a perfect body, a symmetrical face, or some special techniques from an adult playbook to be unforgettable. Sure, a man might crave a body, enjoy a night, remember a pretty face for a few days, but that craving, that deep, almost primal longing to come back to you again and again without knowing why, it doesn't come from the skin. A man sees hundreds, even thousands of bodies in his lifetime. Eventually, they all start to look the same. They blur into background noise, like photographs shoved randomly into a drawer. But there is something he never forgets. Something that burns itself deep into his nervous system, into his very core. He never forgets the woman who dared to do something with him that no one else ever did. The one who touched him more deeply than anyone else. Without a single physical touch, the one who undressed him emotionally in a way he's never experienced. A man doesn't get addicted to a body, but to the woman who laid his soul bare. Sounds poetic, it's not. This is neurology, psychology. This is the hidden truth that 99% of women don't know, and that barely any man could ever put into words. What exactly is this emotional undressing? Is it a conversation, a glance, a gesture? What switch flips in the brain that turns you from just another woman into the only one? And why is it so powerful that it eclipses every other woman? If you stay with me, I won't promise you 3 cheap tricks. I'll give you a map of his psyche, precisely when he's at his most vulnerable. And I promise you, after this, you'll be connected to him and to yourself in a completely different way. But the question is obvious. If this emotional exposure is so powerful, why does no one talk about it? Why are we still so obsessed with appearances, the gym, makeup, expensive lingerie? The answer is simple but brutal. It's easier to work on the body than the soul. It's more convenient to watch a makeup tutorial than to really listen. It's more comfortable to buy new clothes than to confront your own vulnerability. We've built a society based on appearances, on what others think, on how we seem rather than who we truly are. And in this game, everyone wears armor, especially men. From a young age, they're taught, suppress your feelings, boys don't cry, be strong, show no weakness. They're trained to be fighters, providers, soldiers. They're praised for strength, endurance, stoic silence. That armor becomes part of their identity. And yes, it works. On the battlefield, in the office, out in the world. But what happens when the door closes? What happens in intimacy, where the armor should come off? That's where the big secret lies. Most intimate encounters are nothing more than a clash of two suits of armor. Surface level, scripted. How was your day? Good, tired. Conversations that touch nothing, open nothing, connect nothing. You can have the best sex in the world and still feel like you're emotionally light years apart. Sound familiar? Because under that armor is a person, a human being with doubts, fears, insecurities, and a quiet, almost desperate longing to be seen as he really is, without a mask, without a role. And this is the promise of this video. Today you will learn how to become the one woman to whom he willingly hands the key to his armor, not because you force him, but because he feels safe with you. I'll explain why a conversation that felt simply deep to you might have been the most emotionally transformative moment of the year for him, why you'll recall certain moments when you unknowingly triggered this mechanism and a raw connection was formed. And most of all, you'll learn how to do it intentionally, how to create a space where vulnerability isn't just allowed, but becomes the most powerful aphrodisiac there is. Because when a man feels safe enough to strip emotionally in front of you, something magical happens. He gives you more than just trust. He offers you his loyalty, his fascination, and yes, his dependence. So get ready, because we're about to enter a space that very few dare to explore. To understand how you can give this man the safe space he secretly craves, you first have to step into his skin. Not as a fantasy, but as an exercise in radical empathy. And imagine his day for a moment. He wakes up, and the war mode kicks in instantly. He has to perform at work, be the best, have answers, solve problems. Doubt is seen as weakness. After work, he meets friends, same game, different clothes. It's about success, new car, promotion, weekend wins. It's all a subtle competition, a constant measuring of who's more successful, more masculine. Vulnerability, a joke. Complaining, ridiculous. Then he goes on a date, and he knows exactly what's expected. Be charming, confident, entertaining, have a plan, pay, lead. It feels like a never-ending audition, where one wrong move could be the end. He's used to women asking about his job, his car, his status. His armor is the center of attention, and he shows it off, polishes it, because he believes that's all he's worth. Day after day, the mask fuses with his skin. Eventually, he doesn't even realize he's wearing it. He lives in exhausting superficiality, in a never-ending performance where he plays the lead role in a script he didn't write. But deep down, in the quiet moments before sleep or under the shower, this man longs for something real, something raw, something he can barely name because he doesn't even know how to ask for it. He longs for a ceasefire, for a place where he doesn't have to prove anything, where no one judges him by his bank account, his job, or the car he drives. ChatGPT said, he longs for a space where he can take off his armor, breathe deeply, and say, I'm exhausted today. I'm afraid of failing. I don't know what I'm doing with my life right now. And for the person in front of him not to see him as weak or broken, but to simply look at him and say, I understand, and it's okay. That is a safe space, not a physical place, but an emotional state that you, as a woman, can create. It's like an oasis in the desert of his inner world. Most people want to entertain him, impress him, or worse, fix him, but almost no one gives him what he truly needs, a refuge for his vulnerability. And this is where many women, with the best of intentions, make the biggest mistake, a mistake that destroys any chance for deep connection. They believe the path to intimacy is through sex. They think seduction, games, and suggestive messages are the bridge to his inner world. But the opposite is true. Sex can be the result of intimacy, but it's rarely its origin. Approaching a man through sex is like trying to get to know an architect by only looking at the basement of his building. You miss the blueprint, the structure, the heart of it all. True intimacy, the kind that's addictive, begins long before any clothes come off. It begins on the battlefield of his emotions. Think about it. He comes home after a terrible day at work. He feels like a fraud, a fight with his boss, the weight of not feeling good enough. His armor is scratched. What do most people do? They ask the most useless question in the emotional dictionary. How was your day? And he automatically replies, good, tired, as usual. And the conversation ends there. Connection, dead. Now imagine a different scene. Same day, same burden. But you look at him, pause for a moment, and ask a question that disarms him. Something like, forget the job, what internal battle did you fight the hardest today? Or what thought kept circling your mind today, the one you couldn't share with anyone? You ignore the armor and knock directly on the door of his most vulnerable self. Maybe he brushes it off with a joke, but something is different. You've planted a seed. Without saying a word, you're communicating, I care about what's underneath. I'm not satisfied with the official version. I want to know the real person behind the mask. The turning point, the moment that changes everything, is not in analyzing his problems or offering solutions. He's not looking for a therapist or a coach. The mistake is in trying to give him advice. What he truly needs is a witness, someone who hears his fears without judgment, someone who acknowledges his quiet battles, someone who's interested in his scars, not as signs of weakness, but as the roadmap of his life. If you care about his shattered dreams, the projects he started with hope and then had to abandon, if you ask him about his smallest victories, like the day he forced himself to go to the gym despite inner resistance, or finally made that dreaded phone call, these are the keys to his inner world. Each of these questions is like a click of the lock on his armor, and the more he opens up, the less exposed he feels, and the more he begins to admire you for your courage to dive that deep. And this quiet admiration is the first step to loyalty. It's in that exact moment when you've created that space and he starts revealing fragments of his soul to you that the real magic happens. That's the moment that turns a fleeting encounter into an unforgettable connection, the point of no return. Because you need to understand one thing. A man can have sex with many women. He can desire many. The body attracts, yes, but the world is overflowing with physical stimuli. His primitive brain is oversaturated, beautiful bodies, fleeting pleasures everywhere. But connection, a safe haven for his soul, someone who doesn't just tolerate his vulnerability but quietly honors it, that is incredibly rare. That's like a unicorn. That's the most precious treasure in his emotional world. And if you give him that space, you're giving him something he can't find just anywhere, but something absolutely unique. And his brain, his nervous system, his entire being will remember it. Then comes the explosion. Physical nakedness arouses for a moment. Emotional nakedness creates a bond that never fades. I'll say it again. Physical nakedness is temporary, an act with an end. Emotional nakedness is lasting. It leaves a mark on his chemical memory. Because when he shows you a crack in his armor, and instead of pouring salt into it, you touch it gently, you're sending him the most powerful message a man can receive from a woman. You're not saying, I like you. You're not saying, well, I want you. You're saying something far deeper. I see you behind your armor, and that doesn't scare me. It makes me fall in love with you. I see your chaos, your doubts, your struggles, and I don't think you're weak because of them. On the contrary, I see you as human, real, and that real man under all those layers, that's the one I choose, and I respect him. That's the climax, the switch that changes everything. In that moment, you're no longer just a woman he enjoys spending time with. You become the woman he needs. You're no longer an option. You become his anchor. You're not entertainment. You become his sanctuary. And nothing, truly nothing in the physical world can compete with that. So how do you actually do it? How do you implement this in real life without it feeling forced, without it sounding like cheap therapy? Because understanding the theory is one thing, but living it out in everyday life is something else entirely. The key is subtle, but it changes everything. Stop trying to impress him. Start trying to connect with him. That's the essence. That's the shift in perspective. Your goal is no longer to be the most beautiful, the smartest, or the most entertaining. Your goal is to be his peace. It may sound abstract, but it translates into very concrete actions. First, and this is the most important, you must lead with your own vulnerability. You can't ask him to take off his armor while you're still wearing yours. But be careful, this doesn't mean sharing your deepest traumas on the first date. It's about microdoses of humanity. Casually sharing a small insecurity, for example. Sometimes I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing at work. Do you ever feel that way too? Or, today I just felt kind of invisible. It was a weird day. By opening up first, you give him permission to do the same. You show him the ground is safe. Second, you need to learn the art of asking questions that open doors, not the ones that close them. Forget, how was your day? If you see him lost in thought or stressed, try asking questions that invite self-reflection, not a report. For example, what weighed on you most today? If you could fix just one thing today with the snap of a finger, what would it be? When was the last time you were proud of yourself but didn't tell anyone? The key to these questions isn't just in the words, but in the intention. You're not asking to gather facts or to judge, you're asking to understand. Now comes the most important third step. Listen to hear, not to respond. When he starts to talk, your only task is to be a silent witness. Don't interrupt him. Don't offer solutions. Don't say, if I were you. Don't say, oh, it's not that bad. These kinds of responses are poison. What they really say is, your vulnerability makes me uncomfortable. Let me fix this quickly so we can return to the surface. Your job is to create an empty space, a space where his words can simply exist without being judged. Look him in the eyes. Say things like, I understand why you feel that way. That sounds really heavy. Or simply, thank you for sharing that with me. You're building a refuge, not an interrogation room. He doesn't have to tell you everything. He just needs to feel that he could, if he wanted to. That feeling of safety is the real goal. Because when a man senses that your peace doesn't judge him, that your eyes don't run from his inner demons, that's when the miracle happens. He stops seeing you as someone he's dating and starts seeing you as someone he wants to stay with, as home. And in the end, after this whole journey through the depths of male longing, you may realize something unexpected. Maybe all of this wasn't so much about him, but about you. We've talked about how to attract him, how to connect with him, how to become unforgettable. But what truly matters in the end is this. True strength doesn't lie in what it does to him, but in what it awakens in you. Because to create a safe space for someone else's vulnerability, you first have to create one for your own. To learn how to listen without judgment, you must learn how to quiet your inner critic. To look behind a man's armor, you must also have the courage to look behind your own. This is not a seduction tactic. It's a path of personal growth, disguised as love advice. Every time you choose empathy over ego, connection over conquest, listening over speaking, you don't just become more attractive to him, but to the entire world. You become a woman with depth and calm that others can feel. A woman who doesn't need to shout to be heard. A woman who doesn't need to reveal everything to be seen. The most powerful kind of attraction isn't the one you can see, but the one you can feel. It's the feeling of being truly seen and accepted for the first time in your life. But it's also the energy you radiate when you feel whole within yourself, when your confidence doesn't rely on his approval, but on your own ability to connect human to human. Think of the women you admire most, the ones with that certain something. Their strength rarely lies in outer beauty. Their strength lies in their presence, in how you feel around them. Safe, inspired, calm. That is the true goal. So, the next time you feel insecure, when you think you're not enough, when you feel you need to change your body or your face to be desirable, remember this. The most powerful aphrodisiac, the most irresistible quality you possess is your ability to be a sanctuary in the storm. And no one can take that away from you. It doesn't wrinkle, it doesn't age, it never goes out of style, it only grows stronger with time. So the next time you sit across from him, you have a choice that will define the depth of your connection. You can offer him what the whole world already offers: a pretty face, a surface-level conversation, a body for one night. You can play the same game everyone else is playing, the game of external validation, quick wins, fleeting attention, or you can offer him something that few dare to give. You can choose to look behind the role he plays and connect with the man he truly is. You can offer him quiet closeness instead of empty noise, a deep question instead of a shallow compliment. So I ask you, what kind of woman do you want to be? The one who makes his life prettier for a while, or the one who becomes the architect of his inner peace? The choice is yours. But never forget, don't offer him your body for a night. Offer him a home for his soul, and he'll stay for a lifetime.